Hashaparo, YNS7. Thank you for tuning the replay. Today I got Eric Jordan with me, activist out of North Carolina. Eric, go ahead and introduce yourself, big guy.
Hey, Prosper, how you doing? Thank you for having me. My name is Eric Jordan. I'm retired Army, and I work in the mental health field. I also reach out and volunteer in lower SES communities, meaning lower socioeconomic status communities. And I help teach young brothers, especially, my focus is on how to be a productive part of society and giving them resources that they can arm themselves so that when they go out into this world, they'll understand who they are and where they are and where they want to go.
Awesome. So what we're going to do here is today we're talking about boycotting. Okay? And I'm titling it Boycott What Exactly? Right? Boycott what with a question mark exactly.
Gotcha.
Okay? So the undertow is going to be one cannot boycott what they have not yet replaced. All right?
I am so glad that you said that because, once you're ready, that's a perfect segue into why I will support boycott.
Explain.
Okay, so for one, I'm part of a Facebook group called Keeping Money in Your Community. And in this Facebook group, it elicits, well, not it, but each member or whoever the Facebook founder, the group founder, elicit each person to promote their own business, their Black-owned businesses. So in that stance, that's a replacement, and it's not to undercut any other group of people and to either put someone out of business, but it's to promote Black businesses. And so if it takes a boycotting to promote and or strengthen the Black community, I'm all for it.
Okay. So you're saying that it's going to give an opportunity for let's say you're saying Black businesses, and we could also say comma all small businesses to get an opportunity to serve the community in replace of the larger corporations and stuff like that, correct?
Well, kind of, because make no bones about it, I'm for Black first, and
Okay.
it's not, that does not mean everyone else never. What it means is forever, for as long as we've been here in America, starting from the Homestead Act all the way up to fair housing to, even small Black-owned businesses today, we haven't had that fair share of what was supposed to be divvied up for everyone. And that includes, being treated like a human being. So we understand living in this capitalist country that we do live in, if you don't have means to strengthen yourself, well, let's say it with money, with capital, then you're not going to make it. And so if it takes boycotting to get attention so that yes, we can be part of government funding, subsidies, everything else that everyone else is afforded, then so be it. I'm all for it.
Okay. So let's take a look at the term boycott. So
Okay.
the etymology of the word boycott is an allusion to Captain Charles, right? Boycott 1832-1897. English land agent over Irish tenant farmers who refused to lower rents and was subjected to an organized campaign by local people who refused to have any dealings with him. Widely instituted towards others, the term was quickly adopted by newspapers in many European and non-European languages. So the actual original intent of the word boycott was a group of people coming together against, let's say, one person in this case, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in that case, it's actually quite the chances are very successful when you have like a whole town coming together against one person. Now in today's
Right.
market, that even still wouldn't be as easy because maybe that person could sell online, do business online, still move product without actually having foot traffic into a shop. But that's the origin of the term. So, what do you hope to accomplish, or what would be the accomplish? What's the mindset that people are looking to accomplish with the various boycotts? You think?
Oh, I'm glad you asked me that. Well, you keep asking these great questions. So I tell you what, now here's my purview of what boycott means and what I've studied from the 50s and the 60s and moving forward, and to making a movement have its words, I mean, have its teeth, right? So a boycott is like, put it this way, removing yourself from a social relationship. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a social relationship with a business, Kmart. And if Kmart says that, I don't care about customer service to you, to all you tall people with brown hair, you see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And if all tall people with brown hair remove themselves from that social relationship that we're supposed to have equally with them and do it in a way like a protest, you can make a difference, especially if there's enough people who put money into that social relationship or enough interest into that social relationship. If you remove yourself and they realize, well, hey, we're being affected, our bottom line is being affected because they have removed themselves, they're gone.
Okay.
So we know here in America, our buying power is phenomenal. We know that. So if we peacefully remove ourselves from that social relationship of big business or bottom line dollar, it will be felt. But the problem is we have to do it on a grand scale and in unison.
Okay. So in the bus boycotts in history, right? They were actually pretty successful, and the success of those, some bus lines went out of business, right?
That's right. That's
So
right.
the success of that shut down bus lines, which left people what to use.
Well, see, I'm glad you said that too. Right? So did you know that even uh, during that time of protest or that boycott, there was a huge bus line here in Winston-Salem, a black bus line. Am I right or wrong, Michelle?
Mm-hmm.
So it's called what? It was called Safeway. I didn't know the name, but I am aware that there was a huge black-owned bus line here,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's what we can be used. That was being used. Now I'm going to go a little bit further here in a little while to tell you how it was a detriment to us. But with this group alone that I'm in on Facebook, they're promoting a diverse group of black-owned businesses. Everything from dentistry to hair to what else did I show you, Michelle? It's all kinds of businesses.
Mm-hmm.
Cosmetic, I mean everything, black-owned businesses. So no, as grown folks with a conscious mind, we should not go into anything blindly without doing any kind of either experiment or research. So I don't think that we as a people now, especially with this modern technology, I don't think we're just moving blindly just to hurt somebody. We're moving in a strong political and social way to promote and to help ourselves. Because 401 years now, we've been asking for help. Emancipation Proclamation hit in what 1861, well 1865 for us, literally, and they just let 4 million black Africans go and said, okay, survive. Either you come back and work for us for either nothing or little to nothing, or you just die. And at that time, there's a book out right now, someone was telling me, but I can't remember the name, and they're explaining this a little bit more in detail. And at that time, blacks were just dying, or they were going into the what's that called? When they were working for, they had to pay off the tools and sharecropping. God, I can't.
Yeah.
So between sharecropping, the peonage system, and just blacks trying to make it on their own, we were dying off like crazy until we started making it on our own, in which we saw Black Wall Street, we saw what's the other? Yeah, Rosewood. So all these communities where we actually started blossoming, then they were torn down. So now we have that strength again. So now we can promote ourselves. And if it takes a boycott to get us on our feet, to say, look, we're not going to beg anymore, because obviously, the system doesn't care. I can't say it's all people, but the system. I would rather you put your arm around my shoulder than keeping your knee on my neck.
Very, very well put there. Very well put. So now with the actual bus lines, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can we agree to one thing? Can we agree that I understand the Winston-Salem example. I understand you could give some other examples like that probably across the country, right? At the time.
Mm-hmm.
Can we agree that there was a drastic reduction in the available buses for the typical or average citizen to use, which made it, in success, a little bit more difficult to commute and or a little bit more expensive than prior to?
I can't, and I'll tell you why. Just in Mississippi, in Detroit, in Alabama, in Kansas, activists, other black folks banded together.
Mm-hmm.
We started carpooling. We started our own cab lines, bus lines.
In the 60s?
And, oh yeah, oh definitely in the 50s. And so when you put passion onto a cause, brother, it can move.
Now, I hear what you're saying, but can we agree that that is a lot more energy and effort if you had to move the same amount of people? You're actually, by your definition, by your explanation, saying that we would have to exert much more force than prior to be able to continue moving those people, and that means that the logistics is not going to be as easy as it is. So one way or another, somewhere there's going to be additional costs.
I'm glad you said that. You know why? So it may seem like that from the outside looking in, but guess what you're going to start doing?
Okay.
When you start with passion, and you have other people of like mind and ilk to buy into what you're doing,
mm-hmm.
that money stays in that community. You see what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So if I put money into your bus line and I have a resource, and you put that same money I just gave you back into me, and I give it to another brother who gives it to the bus line, who gives it back to me, and you see where this is going?
I absolutely do. So
it would seem like it would be difficult in the beginning, but it's just like anything that you start building your foundation is the hardest part. But once you start maintaining it can go.
So building the foundation is the hardest part. And you're saying, and then you're saying in response to the boycott, we can generate all these great ideas to sustain ourselves at some point thereafter, right?
Brother, we do it all the time. Matter of fact, we're doing it now.
So my question to you is, how much better would it be if we put the horse before the cart and actually built that system prior to the boycott? Then it wouldn't actually need to be a boycott, because you would have a system in place that you would just start utilizing, and there would be no need for pickets or boycotts or any of that, because you'll just start shopping with the other vendor, us, or your community, right? And you don't even have to spend no money with them. So,
you know
what do you think about that?
Let me give you a reason why I see what you're saying, and you know where this is going with that inflection.
Okay.
But I don't agree with it, and I'll tell you why. You can take this and put this on a micro level and say, let's make it a real life example. Put two young brothers that's trying to put that horse in front of the cart out in the open, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're trying to move, and you let a group of white people see them doing something positive, because you know that, well, I don't know about what you know, but I have been somewhere where we mind our own business, and if it looks good or if it looks like it's promoting black, guess who's coming? We know this. That supremacist mind is coming, and they will try to intercede and put an end to it. So, for example, two brothers waiting in Starbucks a couple of years ago. You see where I'm going with this?
I do.
They were starting their own business, young brothers doing positive things. Just that little bit of of angst. Why are you here? You shouldn't be here. I'm calling the cops. They're minding their own business. What they don't know is that these two brothers could have had so much equity that could have, hey, thank you for allowing us to use this as our starting point. You know what that kind of advertisement would have done for Starbucks?
Yes.
So all I'm saying is when we do, not all the time because there's brothers that's made it, there's sisters that's made it, but more times than not, when we start, no, 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 you're more dangerous to me than a thug. A positive, strong, educated black man. Danger, danger, danger.
So if that's the danger, right? I mean, this, to me, with an open mind and open eye, you're actually supporting everything I'm saying. If that's the danger, and they would stop that, they would prevent that. Why do you think they allow the protests? You see, why do you think they would allow the boycotting? Because that's not going to hinder them if we don't have the system to replace it. So what you're saying is they wanted to hint, and I don't. We don't have to even just narrow this down to one group of people versus another, because the infrastructure is and then there's everybody down here, right? We know they don't took out. All right, so what we're gonna do is the word produce is to extend or proceed, right?
Okay.
So proceed. 1 second here. Proceed is to spread, continue. Huh?
Can I say one thing real quick?
Go ahead.
If you look at each zeitgeist that had an evolution or a movement that progressed and made or had a positive outcome, it was literally a perfect storm. Everything from 1771, when the Boston Tea Party had its event.
What was the Boston Tea Party?
Well, taxation without representation. You had people fed up. You had the redcoats come in, and I can't remember who it was.
What were they fed up with, though?
Oh, the taxes. So capitalism, of course, the money. They were being taxed like crazy. So you're not here, but you're far away. You're way overseas, telling us how we should behave, basically.
Okay.
And then
can I give you this? Let me give you this to that. What that actually was about was the separation from the Central Bank of London. And if you go into more finite of a definition, it was the separation from the debt, because the only currency in circulation in the colonies or in the country at that time, whatever you want to describe it as, came from the Bank of London. So the interest was owed back to the bank, but the problem was if I gave you $1 and say you owe me 25 cents as interest, you can only get that 25 cents from me. It was perpetual debt, and perpetual debt with a nation usurps their sovereignty. So they split from that. And that's why they didn't have bank charters last for more than, well, one, they didn't want no more, but then they didn't have them last for more than 20 years in the beginning until Woodrow Wilson, when he sold out the country to the Federal Reserve Bank, which is now the new Central Bank of London.
Okay. So
you see, they had to have a system to replace it, though, which they tried to do, which is when you see the time in history when the different states had multiple versions of $5 bills and everybody had their own, like almost every county or city. It was all these different versions of like each denomination of bill. That was the states at that time making their replacement system, which is what started that whole communication between them that led to the Boston Tea Party to begin with.
Well, okay, again, like I told you, I'm not an expert and all.
Nah, that's cool, but let's talk about it.
My point was, it wasn't to specifically identify that, but to keep going with every time there was an evolution, it was almost like a perfect storm.
Give me another one.
I mean? A lot of it started with passion. And then you move to the next one with civil rights. Started in the 50s. It was a perfect storm.
What was civil rights?
Civil rights was unequal pay. The Fair Housing Act was just implemented and was crazy. You had soldiers. I tell you what the perfect storm was that kicked it off in the mid to late 40s was black soldiers coming back from World War II, not getting their VHA. They were if they were found in some instances, if they were found in uniform after fighting for their country, either beaten or killed. Okay, so that kicked off that. So that was part of that perfect storm. Hold on before you cut me off.
No, go ahead.
Now you have the perfect storm here. There's another evolution starting here. We had people locked up in the house, so you had to learn how to recommunicate again on a human level and not just technology. You had families discussing events and talking about things like, we did in the 60s and 70s and 80s, because I remember those time periods. I'm old enough to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So then you throw in not only having to be in the home and then eventually learning how to recommunicate, then you have this serious and just maniacal injustice of seeing within the same week 3 atrocities being committed towards black people in America. And that's to the point even where even those that aren't like us go, wait a minute, I didn't realize all this was just that bad. You
Okay.
see what I mean? It's like a perfect storm. Each time there's a big revolution or evolution.
All right. Let me catch up with you. So I agree with everything that you said. I also can add. I can also add that those same people from other groups, if you want to say, also when they look into their own, it's happening to them too. I did a video back on YNet7 a week or so ago that covered all that. Um, and it's in sometimes even more brutal fashion than it is to one particular group or another. So really, all the groups need to come together to provide us to. Okay, so we got that, which is kind of like what we see going on here. But I don't want to lose sight of the fact that it's happening to everybody. Everybody needs to respond, not just to focus on one group. So what we're looking at here is the boycott. You want to stop the proceeds, which is to spread or to continue or to bring forth, and to extend is actually the value or assess, right? But here's the actual issue. Here's the issue. So civil rights, if we go back to civil rights, that was actually an operation by the government. See, a lot of people think that brought a certain group of people up to some sort of standards, when in reality it took all the rest of the people and brought them down to the same standards. Now, no matter what playing field you were on, the perspective would appear the same. You appear to see unity. But what they don't realize is that instead of bringing one group up, it took and brought the other group down. And that's why they all equal to the people up here looking. And the system is put up the way it is. So without proper knowledge of jurisdiction, right? Without proper knowledge of status, you might wind up in the wrong jurisdiction. So that's the game. That was the card move. It was under the illusion. They build the emotional attachments through the display. We know that all the world is a stage, right? So here's the issue. We go out and we boycott a certain store or a certain industry.
Right.
But we also looking here at, we got a chain. So you got factories that supply to factories. You got overseas coming in that supply some of those factories, right?
Yeah.
Then you got the factories sending their stuff to the logistics centers, where that's the trucking companies, the warehouses, the local regional warehouses, send it to the smaller warehouses. Then it gets to the retail stores. So let's say if we do anything to, the equation got to be equal on all sides. So if we affect one part of that equation, what are we going to do? We create an imbalance in the rest of it. So let's say we knock out Walmart. Nobody spends, Walmart somehow goes out of business. Do you realize the strain that's going to put on the global economy for factories that used to supply factories, imports for raw materials, the logistics centers, et cetera, the disposal units, the recycle companies?
So there's a broad spectrum to this.
So
right?
System, let me close here with this.
Okay.
So when you say you have to have a system to replace it, it's not just saying open up a store in your neighborhood, because the way you boycotted that store that went out of business, what if the rest of the system boycotts that? We still haven't completed the system. Go ahead, speak on that for me.
Okay, so what I was going to say is, like, why does it have to be out of business, and why does it have to be like fully replaced? So as far as I'm concerned, again, boycott is to remove yourself from that social relationship.
Okay.
And go to your own. So take your resources and apply it to you.
Yes.
So that's just, if I was going to your garage and you and I were boxing together, you had a nice little gym set up, right? You're my man. I like you. But you started seeing, like, you had more people coming over, put it that way, right?
Okay.
So I didn't have time to get in where normally I could, because, it was just you and I, and it was more flexible time. So, okay, well, I take and I start building up. I have a little ball in my, whatever. So why not take the money that I'm paying you and finish building up mine. That's not taking everything from you because now you have other customers. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So on one side, on one end of the spectrum, it's like, okay, I'll just take and stop, shopping with you and help build my own, and you're fine. And the other end of the spectrum would be the total opposite, because everything is a dialect, right? It's like dialecting, right? So one
Okay.
side, then there has to be an opposite. So the far end of this would be if I have so much investment in you and I take it all away and then everybody else follows me too, then yes, you go out of business. I don't think that's what the idea of a boycott is to, okay, well, for me anyway, is to build my own.
Thank you. Because that's actually what I've been propositioning to people all along. If the end game is to build your own,
Yes, sir.
why are we taking a detour with why are you like Muda principles, Demaic principles? You don't want to have any wasted energy. You want to eliminate waste. So
Right.
why are we wasting time, energy, and effort focusing on not spending over here instead of just directly starting in the beginning, applying to building and constructing the system needed to replace it? So that's what the phrase it means, that one cannot boycott what they have not yet replaced. Because if you spend the time and energy on the boycott, if it's successful or not, you still haven't applied the energy and effort to create the system to separate from it, so you're doomed to return to what you're boycotting. Unless it's super successful and it goes out of business, then you have, damaging effects.
So I'm from the inner city of Detroit.
Okay.
Right? And so I'm going to kind of put this in perspective that way. And in the 70s, my father had a friend who was Chaldean, or, from the Arab nation, right?
Okay.
And he told my father in 1978, he said, you know what? The whole time while the American government was keeping black people out the front door, they've been letting us in the back door. And this is back in 78. If you go up to Michigan now, Chaldean, Arab ran. They have their own little city of Southfield, their own little government. They own all the food sources, they own all the gas sources, and they own all the banks up there.
They did the same thing to the Chinese, right?
I don't know about them. I just know where I'm from in Detroit, and that's how it is up in Michigan.
Like 1840 to 1870.
Huh? Yeah.
1840s to 1870, the Chinese around the world.
Right.
France, U.S., Cuba.
So my point is that when he told my father that, my father, I get this from him, and that the way of thinking, well, you ask questions. What do you mean by that? And he told them, for every one of my family members that come here, we get a 5-year interest-free loan. And then part of that is a government subsidy. So starting a business for them would be something like, back then, like $2,000 to $5,000. And then they get other money added onto that just to start a business. So what they would do is every 5 years, they would put that business in another family member's name, and they keep rolling over and over.
Correct.
Like that. So if I'm not getting that luxury, I can't just all of a sudden just run and start a business, especially if the banks aren't adhering to rules. So what I'm saying, like today, like in this group that I'm in like 2 or 3 different groups. You take that resource in a boycott right then, lump sum, and move it and spread it out to your community. That's where you get your beginnings. Now, some of us, of course, we're going to get government subsidies and variable loans, and now I'm not a business major, so forgive me if I'm not saying something right.
No, come on, we good. We doing this.
Okay, so I'm thinking, the way it's expressed to me by other activists is that you take this is our startup in a boycott, and it's just the beginning. Like I said, it's just removing yourself from that social relationship and putting it towards yours.
So what if we remove the word boycott?
Gotcha.
What if we remove the whole idea of boycotting the opposition, or whatever you want to see as the opposition, and instead just focus solely on building our own? See, like Gotti said here, Boycott of foreign cloth through picketing may easily be violent, though, or through the use of kadai, I may have said that wrong, it is more natural and absolutely non-violent.
So here's my thing to that. All right, two things. Uh, First thing, so if someone takes a word like boycott, which is not a pejorative term, and they make it negative, okay, that's personal. That's their issue. It is not incumbent for someone else to put an emotional band-aid on someone who is being unintelligent. Like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, nothing in all the world is more dangerous than sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity.
Mm-hmm.
So if you choose to make something dangerous that's not dangerous, that's your problem. Now, that kind of goes to what you were talking about with the violent part. I was going to ask you what's the violence. We know what the violence is. As soon as that business is getting started, because someone take their resources and apply it to their own, we know what's coming. Well, I'm going to oppose you because you're not doing my will. That's my issue. Why should you try to oppose me trying to pull myself up by my bootstraps? When that's what you say, meritocracy is supposed to work, but you're not allowing it to work.
Okay, so if we put the energy into a boycott, wouldn't it be natural for the opposing, the equal opposite would be a boycott of what we produce? Now, you're right. So
we shouldn't care. Let's take care of our own.
Exactly. So if we, all right. So for example, with the protests, right? How did the protests get to where they were? Because by being a protest, we opened the opportunity for it to be infiltrated, like they doing it since the Roman days. Send the people out there, blend in, get stuff started, and now you can steer the crowd because, and then label the crowd, and then you can put repercussions on the crowd based on maybe stuff that your own team created within that. So
because of Trojan horse, yeah.
Yes. So by doing, when that whole organization, energy and time, effort, money, funding, we know what Soros does. You know what I mean? He sends checks across seas to topple regimes. So you got to ask yourself, if he's sending $30 million to BLM, and then you see this stuff happening in BLM, you got to know that that's why BLM ain't coming up taking a stand saying, hey, look, this is not what we represent. This is not our intention, because they know they're a part of a program that's programming and exploiting the emotions of people to produce a desired effect in the population.
So, brother, you know what? And we know where things go with that as far as, that's kind of like semantics. With the name BLM being used as a negative term, as a pejorative, where KKK has been around for centuries, but you say Black Lives Matter because they're not involved, or they're not being stroked, or their religion of white supremacy is not being uplifted. We have to put TOO at the end of it for them to go, oh, I get it. No one's saying no other life doesn't matter. We're just saying throughout history, ours hasn't. So we're going to promote we do matter.
Okay. We could spend another conversation showing that we were actually, every group has had a turn at the top and a turn at the bottom. So,
yep.
I don't know
that.
Yeah, like
we've never been a hegemony here in America.
We were running. This was our country first. This was our whole land. Like it was a worldwide civilization. When the Moors fell out of Spain in 1492 March in Granada, that's when Christopher Columbus sailed to what they teach us he's trying to get to India, but they already knew about America and the people over here because the Moors, they already had a worldwide network of trade set up. So,
we know Christopher Columbus never set foot in America.
No, but
yeah.
Well, yes, and if you look at the islands and the middle America, he could easily, because he went around the Ottoman Peninsula, and that's where we touched down first is the Ottomans. So we spread from there, and the Chinese was already here over the Northwest, and an illusion of the Indians they gave us was the blending of the two cultures into what they called the plains. That's why they sold us that idea. So we were already here. The nation was already ours. That's what this is all about. to make sure that we
Right.
kind of forget that we were already here. Webster 1828 says American definition at the time was the copper colored people found here by the Europeans when they arrived. See, you're a shade of copper, I'm a shade of copper, we're all a shade of copper. You know, what you think is the Mexicans a shade of copper, the people in Cuba, all that's a shade of copper.
Right.
Right. So we were already
Well,
here.
right, I got you, but I was just speaking in terms of like what your statement was, as far as like, each one having terms on top and bottom, and we're talking modern America circa 1776. We have never been a part of the dominant culture here in America. We've always been an oppressed people.
I think that's true if we separate America from the U.S. and say that's how it was in the U.S. because we were
Right.
always America, and then the U.S. is invading.
But we're talking about Northern America, yeah, North
Right,
America.
right. The U.S. is the invader, which is why that's when you get into terms like address and post office and all that stuff. You see what I mean?
Right.
Because you have a address if you're a member of an invading army or military force in an occupied land. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
So who are they occupying? They're occupying our land. But when you said what I need you to see though is if all the solutions, everything we talked about, goes back to having to build our own. If you want to say it as ours, another system. Let's just say another system,
I
right?
hear you.
So everything that you're starting with, the end result is going to lead to needing to build the replacement. So if we know that already, why not just put that as the priority and just build the replacement? That's why that's the smarter path because it's the more direct instead of taking a scenic route through a lot of other stuff that are variables unknown. We know. Now, let me say this real quick.
Yeah.
When you mentioned the KKK know who their leaders is. There's no confusion about their leaders, what the agenda
You're
is.
about that?
The KKK.
I'm sorry. I don't mean to keep taking you off topic. Go ahead. I'm
No,
sorry.
no, you good. What I'm saying, in comparison, and I know I blood the BLM, but it's only because that's what everybody's is focused on right now, and they're really the mainstream as far as leading this stuff and taking the blame too when people are doing malicious stuff that may or may not have no affiliation and just able to put up hashtag BLM. So that's what's happening, right? But a lot of that is confused by where the money's coming from, which means they're confused by the agenda. You see what I'm saying? In comparison to the KKK, which we kind of all could say we kind of have an idea of what it is. The BLM people, a lot of them don't understand who's sending the money, writing the check, so they don't understand the agenda, and then they're questioning why certain things are happening during the movement. But it's because it's all part of this world as a stage theatrics that's going on to condition and stimulate the emotional responses. Go ahead.
Well, two things about that, brother. Number one, you and I don't know about you, but people like me are so far removed from George Soros and him paying Black Lives Matters and doing things. I'm an individual black man that's helping my community and talking to good brothers like you. And Sunday I'll be down. Did you know that Sunday there's going to be a Million Man March down in South Carolina where there's going to be brothers and sisters networking and talking about building and resurfacing that foundation and building on it. That's what it's about.
So, what's the benefit of the march?
Again, like I said, networking,
Networking.
together and sharing. There's going to be an addressed topic. Honestly, I don't know what it is specifically. I've been told about it through a group member of mine. I will be there in South Carolina Sunday. I have already moved most of my funds into a black-owned bank. Things like that. This is how you start to build foundations.
Okay, let's go back to this while you're talking to that. Go ahead.
Oh, it's okay. I'm sorry. I don't mean to make things seem rushed. I got 15 minutes.
That works. I know you said you were waiting on something. You told me in advance. I appreciate the time. So,
yes, sir.
My thing with the black banks, right? That's another emotional ploy because then you get your money into the quote unquote black bank, but guess who regulates the black banks?
And that's something I'm looking into. It's there. Some of my funds, like I said, some of my funds are there and the savings. And I'm actually still researching. And so far, it's what I've been told. I've looked into the fiduciary ends, and yeah, it's black-owned bank.
At the top of every industry is a government-owned corporation or agency.
Mm-hmm.
You can't escape that in the
That's
system
true.
the way it is today. So the
That's true.
illusion is the same way they pose Michael Luther King in front of us. You feel like it's one of your own, but you don't realize the puppet strings behind it is just making the puppet dance for us. So go back to this image about the system and the factory producing for the factory sending it to the regional warehouse, the regional warehouse sending it to the local warehouse. You have to replace that whole system before any one change in that system makes any real difference. You see, we got the illusion that we're dealing with Black Bank, but it's just a front because everything's tied back to the Federal Reserve, which is the problem to begin with.
Right.
So
Could be.
it's no, it definitely is because that's the new Central Bank of London. So everything comes from them. Everything comes from them. So until we change the whole system, saying you put your money in a black bank really does no different than putting it in Bank of America. They answer to the same people. The same people tell them what to do, how to do it, and all this stuff. You set yourself up for failure when you go in there and try to get a loan, and you're going to wonder why they didn't give it to you based on the same reasons that Bank of America did.
I just, you know what? It's funny you said that because I just went into a place of business and bought a high dollar valued item, and that's what I had delivered here to the house,
Mm-hmm.
and got the loan from the black bank. I mean, I just decided to do it today and got it done. Now, it's not to say that just because it's a black bank, I got it done. I got really good credit. So
Right. So can we agree with that? You probably would have got it anywhere, right? Because of your situation with your credit.
probably, and I'm not
Okay.
saying that, not, but what I'm saying is I have that resource to apply to that bank. You see what I'm saying?
I
So
get
I
you.
would rather see it there. That's just, again, that's passion. Remember I said you have to start a movement with passion. Because I don't care how fed up and tired people are, if you don't have that belief and that means and that reason, which equals passion, it's really not going to go anywhere.
So if they really didn't give you, if the real reason behind Bank of America and reason why people can get out of foreclosures and stuff like this is because they never actually gave you anything to begin with the loan, because you're dealing with the rule of 9/10, right?
Right?
So they never had it. They never gave you nothing because they never had it. So they got a note. They can't produce the original note because they done already circulated that around the economy in a bond or trade format fashion where people done bought and paid it off for so many times. And meanwhile, you have a separate contract saying you owe payments on it. Is that not the same manipulation that the rest of the banks in the world under the IMF system is operating under? So to say that it's my own brother stabbing me makes me not smile anymore. The intent, their intent, they may not know. Ignorance is bliss. But what I'm saying is, at the end of the day, they're under the same umbrella, so there is no difference. You're putting your money into the same system. You're putting your energy, right?
I'm gonna leave it on this.
Okay.
In here, I truly believe in a boycott, and that does not mean dismantling anything else. It's just to promote what you have or what you're starting. And with that, as far as the bank goes, it's a systemic fact, and this isn't just semantics, that in our history being here in America, there's stats that show where, and they've done experiments where two different types of people have gone into a bank, and only one type have gotten the loan, and they both had the same, what's the word I'm looking for, Michelle? They had the same background.
Right, I got you. Same like FICO
Yeah.
data, same everything, same profile.
Same everything. And so, and again, it's not to say, yeah, all people are certain ways. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just talking about statistical facts. And so, if I do decide passionately to take my money out of a directly owned white bank and put it into a directly owned black bank, that's my passion. I'm not saying everybody else should do it. That's my passion. That's
Right.
how I'm doing my part.
I got you.
Part of anything.
So I appreciate that. I appreciate your time, and in response to the whole conglomerate thing, I just want to point out and close with everything that we've discussed still led in us needing to change and make something different, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes.
so that's why the most straight line is always the quickest route. Let's just focus on making something different, because in the law of attraction, whatever you focus on, we attract. So the boycott is to be against, like they said in the definition. The town was against that one landholder, right? So if we stop being against and start being for what we want, it's a different vibration, a
I'm
different
going to
energy.
disagree with you. It's not so much as being against, it's actually just removing yourself from that social relationship.
And you
That's all. It's
can't
not.
and you can't do that until you got somewhere to go.
That's right.
That's
We
why
have
we got to
to.
build the system first.
I'm telling you, the foundation is here just because we're not showing the whole world, because we know in the past, every time, okay, look what we're doing,
Yeah,
somebody comes along and tries to tear it down.
that's fine. Let's just finish building it so you got somewhere to go when you say no to over here. It's like walking out on your spouse or girlfriend, boyfriend, and you ain't got nowhere to go. At least get your rent money together, get your apartment together. You know what I'm saying? Before you say
Yeah.
peace, so you got somewhere to go. I'm not saying it can't be done. I'm just
Right.
saying it'll
And
be
you know what
so much easier.
I can prove to you that it can be done. And this
I
goes back to how we
I agree with you
started
that it can.
Well, this is how we started this conversation.
Yeah.
Emancipation Proclamation. They let 4 million blacks just go. Die if you want to. We don't care. Some went to Liberia, some stayed on sharecropping, and some died, but then others made it. We are a strong and resourceful, very creative people. Trust me, we're going to be all right.
Yeah, like I said, it's not that I never disputed that it could be, it wouldn't be done. What I'm saying is, what may have a total long detour and take 50 years could be done in 5 or 10 if we organize, just simply focused on the destination.
I got
You know what
you.
I'm saying?
I got you. We're going to be all right.
Yeah,
Thanks
but
for having me.
hey, no problem. Thanks for coming out. Appreciate you. Pasha Power, YS7, Eric Jordan. Thank you for tuning in the replay.
Have a good one.
Enjoy.